First off, I'd like to thank these amazing people who decided to support me directly and make my work here on the platform so much easier. And remember, if you also want to help me out, the missile knows where the join button is at all times. Hello pilots, how have your battles been? Well, mine have been going pretty well. For today's video, I'm flying the F-16A Block 20 from the Chinese tech tree, which is quite similar to the F-16A DF from the US and Italian lines. These jets were recently blessed with the ability to use AIM 120s. They don't differ much from each other in terms of offensive capabilities, but this F-16 has a bit more countermeasures and a parachute to help with landing. Since it has that extra comfort, I'll be flying with it today. Well, in terms of performance, it's nothing more, nothing less than the well-known F-16A from the Old Testament, back in the glory days of Air RB. Great at sustained turns, excellent thrust-to-weight ratio, strong and well-positioned cannon, it's honestly a very easy jet to play. It offers everything the average grinder needs, even though it has IR missiles that, in some situations, are better than a Fox 3. I personally don't feel the need to bring them, so that's up to your preference, alright? Anyway, enough talking. Let's get into the gameplay. Alright, before we start planning positioning, it's important to know that you'll rarely be able to get too close to the furballs or initiate them. Not because you lack radar, performance, or anything like that, but simply because we don't have an HMD. This means more passive and defensive behavior is necessary to manage your positioning while flying this jet. No matter how good its performance is, it's hard to consistently make up for the lack of an HMD. So, to get better frags, I play by balancing distance and safety, which, let's be honest, is pretty easy with AIM 120s. Even though many people say the missile is weak or loses lock too easily, that's not necessarily true, and I'm going to demonstrate that. Using TWS as my guide, I already had a good idea of where most of the more advanced enemies were. Once I got within a comfortable range, I could start a strong attack, especially since I'm in an excellent spot early in the match, and not a single enemy even thought about firing a missile at me, which is a massive mistake. The radar sometimes just won't be able to scan all the targets, so I know it's time to stay alert and be ready to start a defensive circle if needed. With that SM around, I have to think twice before trying another attack. If he's an aggressive pilot, at best, I'm nothing more than a flying decoy. It's funny how I give you this warning, and then the guy just dies a few seconds later like he's a paid actor. Another cool thing about the F-16 is that the countermeasures are on single pop. So even though 45 or 60 units might seem like a small amount, with good usage, it can be way better than it looks. This makes it so much easier to play the kind of game where you need to defend for an extended period and eventually find a window to counterattack. And man, the F-16 is a master at that. See, that's what I'm talking about. You keep defending like you're already dead, and out of nowhere, you pull off an easy kill. The Falcon is an extremely lethal jet when mastered. Why is that? The answer lies in the same type of situation where the previous match ended. When you start understanding people's positioning and manipulating their trajectories, this jet becomes a frag farming machine in duels, or even 1 versus 2, 1 versus 3 situations, and beyond. It's basically a jet for playmakers. But as I said, you need to know how to deal with the lack of an HMD, so any misstep will get you killed. You're essentially doing those extended defenses, but on a much larger and more complex chessboard, and that's exactly what I'm about to do now. In short, I'm flying on the opposite side of where most of my allies usually go. This means that if I overextend, I could easily end up in a 1 versus 8 or worse, maybe not even that, and I have to take advantage of every tiny window of opportunity to make a precise attack, preferably eliminating the chosen target. That's it. Even without an HMD, with the right timing, anything is possible. Of course, you're not going to pull this off every match, but if the enemy lets you, why not, right? Now, I just need to hunt down one last guy who's flying idle somewhere nearby. When I find him, I'll be back. I think out of all the planes and types of players around here, this is the biggest danger you can face when going for this kind of play. Yes, I'm talking about that guy, the player who has no idea what they're doing. You plan to play against people with a logical gameplay style, aiming to eliminate enemies or complete objectives, and then suddenly you run into this player who flew to some random spot and whose actions will only result in 1 or 2 kills if what you're doing goes wrong and they get a 1 in a million stroke of luck. And even then, there are so many ifs for all of that to work. But here we are, right now. Imagine if he showed up while I was in a dogfight purely by coincidence, or if RNG helped him in 1,000 different ways, like a missile reconnecting or a stealth engagement thanks to the spot system. Who knows? But today, you didn't get lucky with me, buddy. Alright folks, I think it's pretty clear by now that the jet got way more fun with the addition of the armament it actually operated. And of course, this also ties into the armament currently in the game. Now all that's left is for Gaijin to do the same with all the other jets from other nations and decompress the game's battle rating. The game can only get better, not worse. There's no need to change the balancing method, no need to limit which jet matches with which. Just do one simple, right thing, and the game improves. You'd be able to fly a jet at its full potential and with consistency, regardless of its strengths or weaknesses. This change to the F-16 as only reinforces what I already believe about this game. Now, enough talking. Let's jump into our last match for those who still aren't satisfied with what they've seen so far in the video. Basically, the context of this positioning is that I tried to replicate what I did in the first match, but this time I had to defend myself against a horde of Fakurs. So it was way more interesting to stay super defensive instead of aggressive. And now, here I am dealing with the situation. And out of all that, I still managed to get a kill. I lost a missile down there to multipathing, but it's not gonna make a difference. Now, instead of continuing an attack, I'm just repositioning to where I think the furball is gonna happen. Alright folks, that's all for today. Hope you liked it. Do you agree or disagree with anything I said? Tell me down in the comments. Your feedback is super important to me. The video ends, but the chat stays. Karma out.